Super Radio Brothers Highlight Movie Review.
Yes, Super Radio Brothers Highlights Movie Reviews here to talk Morbius. I've been dreading this for a while. Another Sony venture into the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery. And let me say this first of all. A lot of people are slamming this movie. Just go ahead and look at the numbers on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was great, but it might be a little better than what a lot of the critics out there are saying. First of all, 10 times better than the Venom movies. The Sony Venom movies are an embarrassment. They're terrible, absolute trash, garbage. You can't even watch them. They're so bad. This was not that. If you're a fan of horror movies,
Super Radio Brothers Highlights Movie Reviews, Morbius Edition.
right away, it gives you good horror movie vibes, and it's a great setup with the Michael Morbius story. I think it works in the first quarter of the movie where it's like, okay, here's this guy trying to cure himself of a rare blood disease, and he turns himself into a monster. He turns himself into a vampire. Age-old story, right? We've seen it a couple of times in Spider-Man, as a matter of fact. Think of Kirk Connors, Dr. Kirk Connors, the Lizard. He lost his arm, wanted to grow it back, turned himself into a lizard, a giant lizard, man-eating monster, right? So we've seen it in Spider-Man before, and that's kind of the role that Michael Morbius plays, a tragic figure who wants to help people, and in doing that, turns himself into a monster. So the whole setup, the horrific beginning with the boat, I thought these were great scenes. I've heard people complain about the way the movie looks. They thought it looked corny. I dig the way all the powers look. I like the way Morbius looks. I think all of that's pretty cool. The story falls apart from there when you get to the second act and of course the end, where they have to compensate for the fact that there's no Spider-Man in this movie. Spider-Man, I just saw Morbius and you're not in the movie. What the heck, man? You actually seem pretty happy about it. Maybe you should be in this movie, which makes no sense. Let's go back and look at the history there. Morbius, first appearance, Amazing Spider-Man 101, 1971, I believe is the year. So to have a Morbius movie without Spider-Man, big fail right there, just like the Venom movies, except this one was actually watchable. So no Spider-Man in a Morbius movie. They have to compensate with that. So what do we get? Spoilers. We get another Morbius type character, his best friend that he grew up with. Now he has the Morbius power. He injected himself to cure himself of the blood disease. So now there are two Morbiuses basically, and one of them can't control himself. He likes to get out there and eat people, where of course Morbius, he's the tragic figure. He has control. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. So there's where the conflict is. The antagonist is actually another Morbius, because in the Spider-Man story, Morbius loses control, Spider-Man has to help him, and here we have Morbius trying to help Morbius number 2. Believe it or not, by the end of the movie, we're going to have Morbius number 3. And the story from there just falls apart. So if you're just looking at it as a straight up horror flick, I think it kind of works. It's entertaining, it's good popcorn, summer fun. But if you're someone who's a comic book nerd and you grew up reading Spider-Man and you know the tale of Michael Morbius, this is a movie that's going to kind of annoy you. And then Sony's attempt to put it in there with all of the other MCU entries, you know, Sony in association with Marvel, you'll see the end credit scenes. I don't want to give too much spoilers on that. I guess I kind of did already, but it'll find its way to connect it to the MCU. And those scenes were even more ridiculous. They made absolute no sense. So let's see. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would I give Morbius? I was surprised to enjoy the beginning of this movie, but it falls apart as you would expect as a Sony Spider-Man villain entry. We're going to have to go here on Super Radio Brother Highlights with a 5 out of 10 for Mr. Michael Morbius and his first film. The biggest disappointment to me watching the beginning of this movie, it's clear that maybe all the producers that have come before, Sony with the Tobey Maguire movies, the Andrew Garfield movies, and even Tom Holland to this point, Morbius is a good option for a Spider-Man movie, because this would have worked great with Spider-Man on the big screen, the actual Morbius story. This, the half story, what Sony's trying to do here, same with Venom, it just doesn't work. It's garbage. But man, if they could have found a way to make this, you know, Spider-Man 4 or something and bring Jared Leto in. I've been killing Jared Leto for a while now. His performance as the Joker in Suicide Squad, I thought he was pretty good in this movie. But it doesn't work without Spider-Man. If this was Spider-Man 4, it might have worked. Who knows? But there you go. Super Radio Brother highlights, movie review, Morbius, 5 out of 10.